Sean Fitz is here to talk about recruiting. Fitz, welcome to the show. What's going on?
Nothing. I've actually been with the show most of the time you guys have been on. It's been a fascinating conversation. I appreciate the takes, and I appreciate you guys talking about the NIL without me. It's pretty great to stay out of that lane because we've got Nate who does such a great job covering it. So no, it's really good conversation. So if you missed it and you want to be informed and educated on that stuff, go back and listen.
Of course, this Fitz's recruiting update is we put this out as a weekly video standalone as well. So I'll put a link here for you to watch the full show. You can watch Nate and I talk about Pat Kraft and NIL and all of those things here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. But of course, if you're watching this video, you're watching the live show at this point, you want to know about the latest in recruiting. And there was a recruiting update to the class of 2026 rankings. Fitz, there's a lot to get to today. What's most important in your mind about what we learned on Monday from On3 and Charles Power and all the rankings that they've updated from On3 Mothership?
I think we're going to dive a little bit deeper on this on Thursday with Ryan Snyder, because we were covering that all day yesterday, and there's certain guys to talk about. There's certain guys that we want to get a little bit more information for this movement. But you look at the latest release of the On 300. Long awaited. Like, this has been something we've been talking about for a couple of months now. The last update for the 2026 class was in October. So that's a lot of film. That's growth. There's a lot of things going on. Camp season starting down south. So there's a lot of things that can change over that 4-month period or whatever it has been since the last one came out. So there's a lot of movement. Most of those guys uncommitted, but there were some Penn State commits moving up. Not surprisingly, Jasir Rogers. If you're on that train, it keeps going up. He's up over 50 spots to number 180 overall, firmly in the 4-star range. If I'm looking at guys moving up, I look at the industry rankings. I look at our rankings. I like where Jasir Rogers is. I like where Jasir Rogers is trending, and he continues to move in the right direction. I think when he gets out on the camp circuit, things will continue to go well for him. And Daniel Jennings. Not a guy we talk about a lot. Way down there. The bottom of West Virginia. He's played in Virginia, right there by the North Carolina border. Like, he's down there. But he's a heck of a football player. He's not the biggest guy in the world, about 6'1.5". But he does kind of everything on both sides of the ball. And he's just a really, really just genuinely good football player. And when we talk about the edge board and the defensive line board in the region, and we'll get to a little bit of that later, Daniel Jennings right up there. He jumped nearly 70 spots to number 165 overall. So a guy that we don't talk about all that much in the class. I mean, he was very quiet when he committed, just because he committed right after, I think it was right after the Lash Bash. And it was one of those things where you just kind of were waiting on the season. So you didn't really notice a ton of it, but he's a really, really good football player. So encouraged by that. Couple of guys moved down, and this is where everybody gets the pitchforks out. But Kevin Brown down to 61 overall. I believe he's number 29. I don't like that move. I think he's closer to a 5-star than he is number 61 overall.
Is that a product of not having a season? Being injured.
I was just about to get into that. He was hurt this year, hurt his foot. He did come back at the end of the season. So probably an out of sight, out of mind drop there, moving down 30 spots. But when you are looking at parsing the top 50, the top 75, the top 100 prospects in the country, there's going to be some movement like this. And Kevin Brown, for not playing the full season, kind of gets dinged there. I think he'll come back up, to be honest with you. I know that there's guys that are ranked really high early. They drop and they never recover. I don't think Kevin Brown is in that mix. So my thoughts have not changed based on the number beside his name. We'll say that. Troy Hune also out of the On 300, 3-star prospect. That's something Ryan Snyder will follow up with Charles Power about. That's not something we're going to get into today on the show, and probably Thursday we'll talk about that a little bit more. But that was probably the most eye-opening thing, is Troy Hune, Penn State's quarterback commit in the class of 2026, down after this latest rankings release. Let's stay in the class here. I got a couple of guys maybe moved a little bit or not much at all that I thought maybe had a chance to break into that on 300. Jaquaden Guilford, the receiver from Indiana, really, really good player. And it's got the athleticism, got the size, got all those.
That one surprised me.
Yeah, he's still a high 3-star for us. And then Matt Sieg, another one of those guys we don't talk a ton about, but the variance on Matt Sieg in terms of his rankings, I think he's a top 100 prospect somewhere. We still have him as a 3-star. I think he's probably in the middle of that somewhere. Back end of the On 300, it's tough because when you play He plays at Fort Cherry, single A school in Western Pennsylvania. The competition is going to be up and down, mostly down. He dominates on both sides of the ball, but he does have the size to back it up. He's got the athleticism, the documented athleticism to back that up as well. So you've got a lot to like with Matt Sieg. He's 88 right now. Hey man, if he's the number 22 player in the state, boy, that's tough for me to handle. I think he's a top 10, top 15 player in the state for Pennsylvania, which is really good this year. Really enjoyed looking through the Pennsylvania stuff. I'm probably going to take a closer look at that this afternoon, see where guys have moved and where guys probably should be. But it's a work in progress, man. These are rankings in February. I say the same thing every year, is like, don't get attached because these things will change. So Penn State's class number 6 overall in the On3 team rankings right now. 9 commits, and they'll continue to trend in the right direction, I think, as they try to get a top 10 class. And I think it's within reach this year.
And part of that is going to be regional prospects, as you always talk about, as we always harp, especially on the Thursday show. Most people who watch this show watch the Thursday show, but you should definitely check in this week as we kind of break down the On3 rankings and some of the recruiting. We're going to get to this question right now because I believe it fits really well. This was a mailbag question submitted earlier this week, but I wanted to get you your thoughts on this right now. Carter Meadows is going to lead us off here in a second, but Blackheart asks, some pretty massive movement for a few Penn State defensive line targets. Does this negatively affect Penn State's chances of landing these players in the region because more spotlight nationally, or is this just updating to the actual opinion of a lot of schools, and we're just catching up to that right now with these rankings?
The way that you worded it is both, because these guys have tremendous offer lists. They have tremendous opportunities for official visits. It just so happens that these guys are now highly ranked, and that's going to change things. Yes, it's going to make it tougher. It's going to make it, as Nate would say if he was on here, more expensive. It's going to make it so that these things might go a little bit longer as those things play out. Penn State's got, we put 3 guys up at the top of Penn State's edge board. And this was week 2 ago before all these things happened. Zion Ali, who's the number 1 player in the country, is committed to Maryland, says he shut it down. Okay. Carter Meadows, who is now a 5-star, number 6 overall, pretty high. But he is a guy that is right at the top of Penn State's board. And Luke Wafel, whose brother just transferred to Penn State. He was a 3-star prospect last week, or 2 days ago at least. Now he's number 19 overall in the country. So that's pretty good scouting, first off. Those are the top 3 targets on the defensive line, or in the defensive end position, which is a great board for Penn State. If you look at the region, if you look beyond, if you look at the guys coming in for official visits, there's a lot of really good ones out there. But those guys are now in the elite. Like, they're not that they weren't elite talent before, but everybody's going to notice. You take a look at these when these rankings come out, and the guys that you're trying to keep secrets on. Grayson McHugh, the offensive lineman at LaSalle College. He's now he went from unranked to number 276 in the country. So he's now a 4-star prospect. Wisconsin offered last night. NC State offered. More offers will come from McHugh when they see that stuff. Wafel, Texas, Tennessee was already in there. Messiah Hampton. And this is kind of probably not to do with the rankings, but he's up to number 165. If you're listening to the show, I'm a big Messiah Hampton fan. Oregon offered yesterday. Now, Oregon did hire Ross Douglas, former Penn State commit Ross Douglas, from Syracuse. They had a prior relationship. Oregon offered yesterday. It kind of comes together. In fact, I'm surprised it waited this long, but that's kind of where we're at with that. But you've got a bunch of these guys who now the secret's out, and now it's going to be tougher because you're trying to finish off these classes with the cream of the crop, with the whipped cream on top. The stuff that makes it a top 5, top 10 class are these top level guys. Yeah. And it's hard to sign those guys, especially if you're Penn State, who was competing, as you guys said in the first half of the show, with Alabama, with Ohio State, with all those schools that, certainly have deep pockets. So, yes, it absolutely will matter. Carter Meadows is very interesting to me because this is a Gonzaga kid in every sense of the imagination. High academic, awesome kid to deal with, fantastic, just like sort of presence about him, like Olu had, like a lot of those Gonzaga kids have. He's a high academic kid. He's always wanted to go to a place with, that kind of combination. Now he's number 6 player in the country. Now everybody's going to go after him. So does that stuff matter? We've said the stuff about Manny Iheanacho, and, I think Maryland's his leader now. So there's a lot to go on because things change when you get up in that atmosphere as a top 20, 30, 50 prospect.
Yeah. I just think it's super interesting. Carter Meadows, Luke Wafel. I haven't seen any full game footage of Luke Wafel yet, but his highlights, just those, they could not be two different prospects from that perspective, and yet both are top 20 prospects at the same position. Just football's interesting. That's really all it is. Football is an interesting thing, and I they I would be interested to see what they would look like in the same recruiting class. That'd be kind of fun to watch. Anything here left over from the rankings, or do you want to get onto the OV schedule?
Yeah, the rankings. Kari Adams, we've been talking about him for a while. The cornerback from Maryland, Penn State top target, one of the top targets. He went up 200 and some spots to number 30 overall. I think on three, kind of catching up with everybody else there. So I think that's a good one. He's got the speed, he's got the size, he's got the tape, he's got everything. Ben Congdon's an interesting one to me. Offensive lineman from Ohio. Phil Troutwine has, I think, offered every tackle that's above 6'7" in the country. And Congdon's one of those guys that's really risen in the last couple of months. Went down to Miami, went down to Florida. He's going to take an official visit to Penn State, but he's the number 176 overall. So just a boom of guys that you can see on the rise. Like you can see it in the look. Offer lists are not the way to rate guys anymore because everybody offers everybody. Like that's not how you do things. But you can see the trends of when guys get offers or when guys have the opportunity to take official visits. That's a big thing with me right now is you're looking at, hey, Penn State's offered 350, 400, 2026 prospects. You're going to get 60 official visits. And it feels like more than that right now because it seems like every hour somebody else is putting out an official visit graphic.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, that's kind of how you whittle down the board is like, we were doing bios this week for our magazine. It's like, okay, this kid picked Penn State over Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, whatever, but like took official visits to Washington and, a couple other schools. So like you're actually picking over the schools that have the opportunity to give you official visits over the check mark beside the name. So that's kind of where I'm standing with that. So, and speaking of official visits, there are so many right now. It was really exciting a couple of weeks ago when these things started popping onto the radar, and all of a sudden you guys got fatigued because there's just so many of them happening. Among the newest ones, Virginia wide receiver Travis Johnson. I like him a lot. He's got some real speed, some real size, heck of a basketball player as well. Just finishing up his basketball season. He's going to be back at Penn State in June. A bunch of defensive backs have set up official visits. Sean Johnson from Maryland, Amari Polidor from Maryland as well, and CJ Brono, Nebraska commit, who was a MVP, a positional MVP at Under Armour Orlando over the weekend. He's got a 10.33 100. He's got some size to go with that. Yeah, he can run. So pretty impressive. Speaking of Under Armour MVPs, Brian Harris, who we've talked about a couple times from Mandarin down in Jacksonville. Penn State offered recently. He stepped back from his Maryland commitment a couple of, I guess it was last weekend. Now all of a sudden he's got a Penn State official visit set up. So I like what Penn State's doing. Like they're flooding the board in terms of official visits. And I don't think all these will happen. I think we're going to see nationally a lot of changes on the official visit schedule because you look at the calendar. Last year at this time, I think Ryan and I were talking earlier this week. And last year at this time, Penn State had like 4 or 5 on the docket, like official visits. Now there's over 40. This is a product of sort of the game of telephone where you see guys start to set up official visits. And then you call up schools and say, hey, I want to take an official visit. Do I have that available? And they say, sure. Yeah, absolutely. You do. Why wouldn't you? And that's just part of recruiting. And then that waterfall goes where all of a sudden everybody's setting up official visits. I think there's well over a dozen offensive linemen that have official visits set up. Obviously, Penn State's not going to take 12 offensive linemen, but you got to put yourself in position for the next step. And that's kind of what we always talk about with recruiting. So Ben Congdon set up a visit. Grayson McHugh, who we talked about a little bit before, set up a visit. Xavier Payne, Florida State offensive line commit, he's set up a visit. So if you want to follow this stuff, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com is the place to go. Ryan had a very clear picture of things over the weekend with official visits. But things have gotten really hot really fast, and now I think you guys are probably tired of it because it's just oversaturated with these things. So we'll see when those schedules change, and when they do, you can read about it on BlueWhiteIllustrated.com.
And of course, you can do that. You sign up now for just $1. You get access to the site for a week. You can try it out. If you miss the dollar a week for a year, you missed that promo. Sorry, you should have acted when you had the chance. Now it's back to you get it for $1 for a week, and you can try us out, see if you like it, see if that information is going to keep you coming back for the rest of time and eternity, which happens to a lot of people, by the way. Sign up, and then you get access for a year after that.